we're still fighting for this title, and he's got to go to Middlesbrough and get something. And I'll tell you, honestly, I will love it if we beat them. Love it.
Good evening and welcome to this special edition of the Southern Manx podcast by the fans for the fans. It's been a while, we know, but we thought we'd come out of the woodwork because United are actually doing okay now. Typical Southern Man United fans. And on the show today, we're going to be talking about the season so far and how Ollie's turned it around. We're going to also recap Burnley away. Look forward to the massive fixture on Sunday at Anfield, and then talk about where we think United is going to end up, what we need in the upcoming transfer windows. On the show today, we've got Mark Powell.
Hi, guys.
Orlando Carrera.
Yo.
And our Chelmsford football correspondent, Joe Perkins.
Evening, gents.
Okay. How are we all, first of all? It's been a while since we all caught up.
Yeah, right. A few pounds
Really
heavier,
good.
but okay.
Yeah, everyone's safe and well in these crazy times.
Surviving.
So, Good.
Great, Nick.
Get in there.
And we hope all of our 157 viewers are too. So, let's crack on. First of all, then let's talk about where we are with United. So, when we first started doing these podcasts, it was a transition between the Louis van Gaal era to Jose Mourinho. Won a couple of trophies. Didn't quite work out for reasons on and off the pitch. We then had the interim manager of a club legend in Ollie. It's been a few highs and a few lows, but now we seem to have turned it around and we're top of the league and could go 6 points clear on Sunday. So, Mark, I'll come to you first. Your thoughts on this season so far?
Yeah, really unusual start. Obviously, you'd normally have a full pre-season, a tour of America or wherever we normally are. I think we had a funny pre-season in Australia under David Moyes where they had to hide in a beach bar. But normally there's sort of a bit of a rhythm that you form. You try out new formations, different players, new signings, youth players. Obviously, we only had one game and that was away at Villa. So I think we were, I wouldn't say slow starters, because if you look at our results, they're not terrible apart from the Spurs game. We've always had problems with Palace at home in recent years, but I think that was, you could see there's something missing, whether it was fitness or fluidity from the team. I felt we didn't get going. There was the game away at Brighton stands out as well. I think where we won it after the full-time whistle. Then obviously disaster at home against Spurs, awful. And then it's kind of been kicking in from there a bit. Obviously, brilliant run of late, away form especially. But yeah, it'd be good to get everyone else's thoughts on sort of what they thought the catalyst for the turning events from that was, sure. Really.
And Orlando, I'll come to you next. How much of that slow start, so Mark mentioned there about the Palace at home game, the Spurs game, the result after the final whistle at Brighton, how much of that would you put down to just the way the world is at the moment with Corona and the fact that we had to start late? Because obviously the Burnley game we just played was a rescheduled game because we were still in Europe last year. How much of that do you think was down to just the way the world is at the moment?
Yeah, I think also don't forget that we had quite an intense end to the end of the last COVID season. A lot of teams were kind of just, seeing the season out, as it were, didn't have much to play for. We were one of a couple of teams who were really going hell for leather to get that top four, because we somehow managed to manufacture ourselves into a position to get that, important Champions League spot. So I think that played a part, because obviously there wasn't a massive time lapse between the end of last season and the start of this one, even though we had that extra week, and of course we had the the Europa League campaign as well to contend with, although didn't quite go the way we would have hoped. So I think it's probably a bit of a perfect storm really in that sense, so that by the time we got to have our opening few games, I don't think we were probably at it physically, or maybe it recovered from it mentally or emotionally from the last season. Also, all the hoo-ha around, are we going to sign? Are we not going to sign? When you've got Luke Shaw coming out saying we need signings, and one of those signings was Alex Tellers that we were highly rumoured with, it just kind of shows you probably the mindset of the squad, that even Luke Shaw was saying we need signings when the person we were talking about was direct competition to him, really. So I think it's probably a few factors, but once we kind of got that, that first wind and, the first few points probably helped to settle us. And whilst perhaps performances haven't quite been there, we've managed to get the points on the board and sort of engineer ourselves into the position we are now, really.
And JP, final question on the start of the season before we look into things more recent. Throughout the summer, we saw the sort of annual circus of Woodward bashing and transfers. We was one tweet away from Wesley Sneijder signing again, probably. What did you make of the window itself, the players brought in? I mean, we're talking here Donny van der Bench, Diallo didn't have a work permit for 6 months, a couple of other youngsters. What did you make of the window as a whole?
Yeah, I think on the face of it, it was another window that we've sort of had to put up with over the last however many years. Not a lot really happening, a lot of talk, a lot of hot air, as the transfer windows tend to be now. And then obviously we've done our bit of business more or less. I think most of them were at the end of the window, weren't they? I think they all took quite a long time to get over the line. You see the likes of Chelsea doing their business early and getting good players in. You're thinking, is it going to be another window we're not going to strengthen? I think we all agree that we needed strengthening in a few areas, and he got a few over the line, right at the end. And I think, going back to what we were talking about a moment ago, I think that did, again, I think it always does play into the fact that it took us a while to get going. Yes, it was a strange end of the season and start to the next one with everything that's going on. But I always think that, getting those players in late does always have an effect on the team and getting going. But I think now, if you look at it and who we've brought in, I think they've done really, really well. The players that have come in, Tellers has been featuring a bit more recently. I've made no secret of the fact that I think having a proper centre forward in Cavani up there, in terms of his movement, sort of off the ball play, has made a massive difference to what we've been doing. So I think, they're sort of bedded in now. It's becoming positive.
And Mark, obviously top of the league is great, but the season has already had its disappointments. Early Champions League exit, another semi-final defeat at home to City in the League Cup. It's been a bit of a mixed bag at the moment. Would you agree?
Yeah, the dropping out of the Champions League it was really disappointing. When you work so hard, as Orlando was saying last season, to break the top 4 and actually finish third in the end. Particularly the efforts of players like Bruno Fernandes, who came in January and really pushed us up the table. I was quite disappointed to drop out in the manner that we did after such a strong start, to go and lose away in Istanbul. And I know, JP, you called it at the time, as in this is going to come back to bite us, and lo and behold, it did. And I think through those periods, it always feels to me like sometimes Ollie is learning on the job. He's learning about his players, about what he's got available, about how to manage games. And clearly, from his time at Mould and Cardiff, he's only going to know so much. There's different challenges, different games, different types of players that he'll come up against. So I think that was disappointing. However, as long as we're learning from it and appreciate that this isn't the finished article, which I don't think anyone believe it is, I'm not that worried. If we were to do it again, if we make Champions League again next season and do something similar, or the City game in the Cup recently, I think we just got to learn from these games, like we've been doing in the league, because we've overcome some obstacles there. The away games at Southampton, against West Ham, not starting the games properly. I feel like we are doing better in that sense. So, yeah, Champions League's disappointing, but we're still in Europe, still got a good chance of winning that competition. So, lots to be positive about.
And Orlando, I'll come to you as he's your compatriot. First time we've had the chance to speak about Bruno Fernandes. Just talk us through the impact he's had on the club, because without doubt that is a a positive shining light that we've had over the last 12 months. In fact, I saw a stat the other day that United have picked up the most points since Bruno's arrival than any other team. So that in itself should tell its own story.
Yeah, they're quite an impact. My old man didn't speak to me for about a week after we pinched him from Sporting Lisbon. So he was a very, very valuable member of the team, obviously at Sporting, captain, and he's gone on to do good things with the national side as well, really cement himself there, which is obviously no surprise considering how well he's done at United. But he's always had that leadership characteristic. That isn't just something that he's manufactured at United. He's always pulled people by the scruff of the neck. Sometimes got into a bit of trouble in Portugal for doing it a little bit too much and maybe rubbing up people a little bit the wrong way. But I think you'd much rather have it that way than the other, and getting that right balance. And it's obvious with the way that he does direct things on a football field, whether it's, pointing for an overlapping run, pointing for a pass, leading by example with his bravery on the ball. And when we talk about bravery, we're talking about trying to find a killer pass, happy and content to make mistakes or not quite get that final ball and make it the right every single time, but is still taking risks nonetheless. And I think that that's kind of pushed perhaps other players on who can do those kind of things and maybe dribbles and other areas, but perhaps have maybe played within themselves. Your Rashfords, your Martials, your players like that. I think him taking risks has encouraged some other more attacking flair players to also take risks, and I think it's been a really, really, really positive impact that he's had, and long may it continue.
And JP, just finally on this topic, can you see a change in Ollie, perhaps in his tactics or his ruthlessness that was once naivety in his 18 months since he took over? Have you seen a change in the way we play? Is it something different now to when Ollie first took over?
I think the thing that stuck out most for me, especially recently, is his awareness of picking the right team for the right game. I think prior to sort of this season, there's been question marks about the lineups he's gone with, the chopping and changing. I think now he's got a very good idea of what his best 11 is. I think in the modern game, I don't think you can say you have a best 11 because there's a best 11 for any given opponent at any given time. I think what stuck out for me most, especially in the last sort of couple of months at the start of this season, is that he really has a good idea of that. He's got a strong hold on what is his best team for a game. I mean, we all know now that for the big games, I'm going to talk about this later, I guess, but for the big games, you're looking at, who the midfield's going to be. You know who the central midfield pairing is going to be. It's going to be Fred and McTominay. The defenders are more consistent now. I think Bailly's given him sort of something to think about, because since he's come into the team again, he's been playing really well. He's a better foil for Maguire, in my opinion, than Lindelof because of his pace. And I haven't really seen that rashness from him as much that we often associate with him since he's sort of come in again. I think for me, it's been about team selection, knowing his best team, and putting that team out there against whoever it might be to get the result that we need. And I think that's been a massive change in how he sort of approached things, and hopefully it will continue.
Okay, yeah, thanks, lads. So what we're going to do now is look back, should I say, to our last win at Turf Moor the other night, away at Burnley.
So I want to be clear that I don't want to play mind games too early. I think that they want to start. So I was taking some facts, and then it will be easy to talk about this.
Welcome back to part 2 of the Southern Manx Man United football podcast. We are discussing our recent visit to Burnley as our next topic in the podcast tonight, which was, what are we now, Thursday, was Tuesday night, away at Burnley, 1-0 victory. Nick, I'll throw it over to you. Give us your thoughts on the game.
The first half was terrible. It resembled something that wasn't football. I really struggled watching the game. The stop starts, the VAR was ridiculously long, one of the longest I've ever seen. I think it showed the naivety of us still, and by that I just mean the petulance that we have within the squad. You saw Cavani, the oldest member of the squad, still arguing with every decision, throwing his hands up. We fell right into their trap of, You know, the ball getting lumped up to Chris Woods and Eastbourne Borough legend Ashley Barnes, for them to feel someone in their back and win a free kick. And it was free kick after free kick after free kick. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist or even a Premier League manager to know that that is how Burnley play. Even on commentary, Gary Neville said, you know, it's not pretty, but this is how Burnley play. And I just felt after that first half performance, I was generally concerned. And there's two teams in the Premier League that I just really struggle watching, and Burnley's one of them. So if they weren't playing Man United, I wouldn't have watched that game. But I enjoy watching other teams, your Leicesters, your Wolves, your Leeds. But Burnley is one of the two teams that I just cannot stand watching, and I just thought we played right into their hands. But in terms of the second half, it was night and day. We got the ball down. We started playing. There was only one team that was going to score, and that was going to be us. So I suppose it's one of those, if this is a successful season, no one's probably going to rewind the highlights of that game. It's not going to be that game that people remember. And thank God for that. If someone puts that game in my Christmas stocking next year, they'll be posted that back straight away with some anthrax in it. That was a terrible game of football, especially the first half. But to come away with 3 points, gritty, as you said, Mark, Pogba, massive plus, Fernandes plus, Bailly, Maguire not getting booked as well, so he's available for Liverpool. I thought Luke Shaw, okay, we'll probably talk about it, but I thought he had another good game. So absolute night and day. First half was instantly erased from my memory. Second half, absolute, brilliant performance second half. There's only one team that's going to win it from there.
Thank you, Nick. Agree with your points there. We're going to lead on there with the match winner, Paul Pogba. We'll take all the headlines, clearly man of the match. Spoke to Sky after the game. Been some controversy with him this season, obviously with the agent and what he said. JP, I know you've had a lot to say about Pogba this season, but last season and what he's done at the club. Obviously, alongside Matic on Tuesday night, or the midfield combination I call Pogic. Tell us about Paul Pogba and his growing influence on the team, and have you been proven wrong?
Yeah, listen, I am always happy to admit when something's changed. For me, since he arrived, he hasn't lived up to any of it. The hype, the money, the ability, none of it. Not on a consistent basis. There's ambling around the pitch. It just hasn't happened. And for me, I was ready for him to pack his bags and go a long while ago. But credit where credit's due. The last, I don't know how many games it's been. It sort of happened gradually for me, but he has been one of the better players, and like you said, a growing influence, Mark, on the game, a growing influence on the team, and he has got that ability, he's got that quality, he's got that extra bit of class that can win games, and that's coming out now, and that's all I've ever wanted to see from him. We knew it was there, we knew it was in him, and now he's bringing that to the table, and long may that continue. I'm more than happy to change my mind, but the reason I've changed my mind is because of what he's done on the pitch, and that's all I've ever been bothered about. I don't care about the Instagram, I don't care about the haircuts, I don't even care about Raiola. He can say what he wants. If he turns up, wants to play for us and plays well, that's all I've been after. And you cannot argue with what he's done in the last few weeks, and in particular this game. He was a cut above the rest. And it was also nice for someone else to be leading that, because Bruno often takes that mantle on, obviously, being the ones getting us playing and sort of dragging us by the scruff of the neck through games. And he really sort of stepped up. And he was the main man the other night. Nothing but praise.
Yeah, I agree. I think he was at times bullying opposition, as we know that he can with his physical presence, ripping through the centre of the park at times, just on a one-man mission. So no, great to see that. Now, obviously, winning games is about scoring goals, but it's also about not conceding. Orlando, I'm going to come to you here. What do you make of Eric Bailly and his influence alongside Harry Maguire? It stood out for me in the Burnley game, but particularly as Nick mentioned with the long balls. Take me through your thoughts.
Yeah, I think Joe alluded to it off air. I think he's a perfect foil for Maguire. I think with Lindelof, I get the impression sometimes Maguire has an extra amount of pressure, almost as if he's doing two centre backs jobs. And I don't think, whilst he is a good defender, I don't think he has the fortitude to be able to take on two roles. Something like perhaps maybe a Van Dijk might be able to do that, for example, or Ramos, is that you feel maybe even if their other centre half pairing isn't quite to their ability, that they could probably do enough maybe to get them by in certain games. I don't think that Maguire's at that level yet. So I think Baye's presence has kind of helped him to play his natural game a little bit more, because where he's lacking in a bit of pace, Baye can do that. But for the same token, I think Baye appreciates it as well, because when it was a Baye Lindelof pairing, or Baye and whoever we would have at the time in previous seasons, I think that perhaps maybe he was almost seen to be the main man, but that was too much pressure for him. So I think Maguire being the captain and the world's most expensive player, it's almost as if they balance off each other really nicely. So yeah, I think he's done really, really well since he's come in. I've always really, wanted him to do well. I've always liked the way he plays. I've always hoped that he would fulfill some potential, but erratic previously. Let's hope that this is the start of a good centre back pairing, because to be honest with you, I have never and will never be a massive fan of Lindelof, other than being perhaps a reserve defender. So I'm really hoping we don't have to go into the market again and Baye's the answer.
Yeah, like you say, hopefully those mistakes that he's been sort of constantly making over the last couple of seasons are a thing of the past. Nick, coming to you next. Obviously, Pogba dug us out of a bit of a hole there to get us over the line. Should we be worried about Martial, Cavani, Rashford not really posing too much of a threat on the Burnley goal?
Yes and no. I mean, last season the goals were sort of equally shared out between Tony, Rashford, Greenwood, Bruno when he came in. This season, it hasn't happened for Greenwood since his antics in Iceland, should we say. It hasn't happened for one way or another. Rashford's been good this season, although Burnley wasn't his greatest performance. As big a fan as I am of Martial, and I am a fan of Tony Martial, you can never see him getting 30 goals a season. And Cavani was always going to be the stopgap, which obviously does lead into other questions, going down the rabbit hole of, getting rid of Lukaku and not having a replacement, which is not for this show. So long term, I am concerned, and I do think we miss that out and out number 9. A focal point that we can build the club around. Everyone knows who everyone wants out there, and everyone right now would go Haaland, but because of COVID and the money and things like that, it's hard for anyone, and I suppose we'll talk about it later, to say this is going to be our number 9 for the next 10 years. So I think one thing you've got to give credit to is what Ollie got out of Martial and Rashford and Bruno and Greenwood last year. And it's just, can we get more of the same now to go towards the end of the season? We'll talk about it in the Liverpool selection. So it's hard for me to hang my hat on Martial going, he's going to get us 15 to 20 by May. So yes, it is a concern, but there isn't a lot more we can do at the moment. And if someone has actually proven they can get something out of those players, it is Ollie.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, we did get the ball in the net through Harry Maguire's header, which was ruled out. Joe, what's your thoughts on the VAR in general in Tuesday night's game? There's a few contentious decisions potentially.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I was all for VAR before it came in. I think it worked well at the last World Cup. Since then, I am not a fan. Any sort of incident where you've got to take it back, or it's part of the same phase, but you go back for 3 minutes earlier to check something. I'm talking about the Luke Shaw incident, obviously, and I think was it Robbie Brady?
Yeah.
I'm talking about that incident. I mean, for me, you're getting into the realms of silliness, really, when you're looking at one thing and then oh no, actually something else has happened. We better go back and have a look at that. For me, it's ruining the game. I'm not an advocate of it, but I also think now it's difficult to take that back out of the game. Now we've brought it in, now we've introduced it. I think it is difficult. I think what we need to do as a sport is refine the way we use it. I think we really need to take a good hard look at it and refine it, because it's just not working the way it's happening at the moment. So yeah, there's that one. Obviously, you mentioned there the Maguire goal. I mean, I've heard a lot of pundits and reporters, etc., journalists on podcasts saying, as well as Ollie did, that they thought that it was a good goal. If I'm being completely honest, for me, I think he did push the defender down with his arm. I didn't have any particular issue with that goal being disallowed. I would have liked it to have stood, but I feel like he did sort of apply pressure with his hand to the back of the head of the defender, which I just don't think you can do in this day and age. So I can see why it was ruled out. But yeah, I mean, as I said, VAR in general, those two incidents, not an issue with the Maguire one. The Brady/Shaw one, I mean, they done all that nonsense, then I feel like they got it wrong anyway. So yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan. I think it's farcical, really. They need to change it. They need to make some changes.
I'm struggling with VAR in terms of the clear and obvious error. I'm struggling with that, because when we spoke about VAR on when it first came out, and I think we actually did a subject on it on one of our podcasts. So subscribers, please go back to the archives. But I think we actually talked about it was gonna cut out or prove right or wrong. But now with this clear and obvious error, the referee, Kevin Friend, was not in a position to see that push on the Maguire one. And you're right, a different official could have said yes or no. Because it's not clear or obvious, VAR won't go back and overturn that or speak differently, because it's not clear and obvious. But isn't clear and obvious subjective to who's in the video room that time anyway? And for me, I don't think it should be scrapped, because we'll just be sitting here doing another podcast going, where's VAR gone? But I think it should just be used for if someone's absolutely done someone, like a clear red. If you think back, I saw it on Premier League years, a couple of days ago, Callum McManaman's horrific challenge playing for Wigan against Newcastle years and years ago. And that made the decision for the FA to go back and look at red cards down the line. I think it should be used as that, and the vice versa of that. Emil Smith Rowe's non-red card in the FA Cup. I think that's perfect. It's right or wrong. But to rule out a goal and have someone 200 miles away go, I can't look at that because it's not clear and obvious, when actually when you look at the referee's position and he couldn't see it through the crowd of bodies, then surely that is clear and obvious. For me, VAR is nonsense. It's ruining the game. That one was over 5 minutes on Tuesday night. I'm not a fan.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you, Nick, on that one. Just to jump in a little bit on the VAR, I think if you go back to why VAR was brought in originally, it was for these clear and obvious errors. And, to use, like, for example, England at the World Cup against Germany and Lampard's goal that was not given, that's clear and obvious, or if there's somebody that, is that much offside, or if the referee or the linesman have got their eyes elsewhere on the pitch and somebody is given an elbow, these are clear and obvious things which are going to really impact the outcome of the game potentially. I think Nick hit the nail on the head there, really. If it's not clear and obvious, it should not be going to VAR. I think, one of the, good points and bad points of football is the referee and the human error aspect side of it. I think as long as we're getting the really, really important stuff, which things like goal line technology has helped, as long as we're getting those things right, I think you're always going to get things slightly wrong. The Luke Shaw position, I'm sure if you asked 100 people, you might get a 60-40 split. You might get a 70-30 split of red card, yellow card, or either or. So that tells you there and there it's not clear and obvious. So, how far back down the line do you go with things? As you mentioned, you've got an incident there, which then precludes an incident that happened then 30 seconds down the pitch. And, it does become a farce. For me, I think goal line technology, to make sure when the ball goes over the line, unless an offside is, I'm talking yards offside, and it either gets given or it doesn't, or if there's a really malicious red card, which is, real foul play, misconduct, elbows, high studs, dangerous, maybe career threatening or injury threatening tackles. Other than that, I think we have to kind of let the game evolve and take care of itself, because otherwise, we're going to go down the basketball route or the other sports rule where, you get free calls, Hawkeye. And to me, it's not even the time element. It's just the amount of decisions that go to VAR that the general public look at and just go, that's ridiculous. Surely that has to be looked at.
I'm on mute. Brilliant. Yeah. Cheers. The most most used saying of 2020, right? Joe, did you want to add something to that on VAR?
Yeah, I just wanted to come in there, and I think you lads listening to you have raised some really, really good points there, and I couldn't agree more with what you've been saying, especially what Nick mentioned. But what I would like to point out as well, and I think is a key part of this, along the lines of it being subjective to who's watching it. Also, watching it in real time is something completely different to like looking at it in this ultra slow motion, minutiae of an event. It's, you can see something that's not there, in my opinion, or you can see more of something that's happened in this slow mo because you're looking for something. And I think, the game has got to realise that we brought this in, but it has to be fluid, and we have to be able to look at it and adapt it and to withdraw things, as Orlando mentioned there. Maybe not for every decision, just for the clear-cut things, etc. We have to be prepared, I think, as a game to look at it and to advance it and to change it and to take things away or to add things in order to get to the right place. And I feel like we've just stayed where we are. We've brought it in. People aren't happy with it. It's not working the way we want it to, but we haven't changed anything.
Yeah. I think we could debate VAR all night in this pod, but it is a Man United podcast, and we have got to move on. I don't think we'll get VAR solved here tonight, but in summary, I don't think it didn't change the outcome of Tuesday night's game at Burnley. Pogba saw us over the line in the end. I think there will be some Man United fans who will think that we should be beating teams like Burnley when there's such a disparity in squad players. I think it was 40 million versus 400 million starting lineup. I think, Nick, you mentioned City usually put sort of 5 past Burnley without getting out of sort of second gear. So all in all, just glad to get out of there with 3 points. I think Spurs had a very close game with them earlier in the season. They can be up in your face. They've a good run of form, but I think Ollie has kind of come out of there with the best possible result, clean sheet, 3 points in the bag, and now we'll look ahead to Liverpool.
I won more premierships alone than the other 19 managers together. 3 for me and 2 for them. Respect, man, respect.
I get to introduce the next segment, Liverpool away. Let's just sink in, lads. 3 points clear at the top of the league, middle of January. Liverpool away at Anfield, one of the best sides in Europe over the last couple of seasons. That's the position we're in. That's where we are right now. Orlando, going to come to you first, mate. How do you see this game? How do you see it panning out for us? What are your thoughts?
Thoughts? Well, there's so many thoughts going into this game, really, for us. I think the dynamic of this game is probably not what we would have expected. I think if you'd have asked us at the beginning of the season, Liverpool away in January, where do you think we'll be? Where do you think they'll be? I don't think many of the even most optimistic fan would have said the position that we currently find ourselves in, but we're there. So, but there's a few things I sort of wanted to mention about the game, and some of you guys might pick up on that as well. Is that away form for us, brilliant. Arguably championship winning form away from home. Liverpool have sort of stumbled a little bit more away from home, but even some of their home form hasn't been as strong as it's been in previous season. And I think Gary Neville alludes to this many times during the games, is that first 20-25 minute period away at Anfield as a United team is hostile, it's horrible, they're in your face, they want to get after you. Liverpool play like that anyway as a team. That's, you know, Jurgen Klopp's style, but we're not going to have that barrage of noise from the Anfield faithful against us. So, you know, that's going to be a real dynamic in the game. We're not going to have to contend with that, and Liverpool are not going to have that wind in their sails going against us. So I think that's going to be a real positive for us. I don't think we're going to have any fear going into that game, whereas in previous seasons, even under previous managers, it's been very much containment, you know, going back to Jose's 6 at the back, 3 defensive midfielders, you know, making us try not to concede. I think we will go there and, you know, pundits will be backing us. They'll be thinking, you know, United have got a good chance here. They're good on the counter. They're strong at the moment. They're confident. And I really feel that we've got a really good chance of coming away with the 3 points. And I think Liverpool know that as well, you know, and I think 6 points in this league at the moment is quite a good lead. You know, I think it previous seasons you wouldn't say it's very much, but I think where everybody's taking points of everyone, no games are safe. I generally feel really confident that, you know, we could really get a result there, and you know, really already don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but you know, yeah, who knows, 21 on its way.
Yeah, completely. And I think the thing is, you know, we go into this game and we have the opportunity to go 6 points clear. Also, if we lose the game, we're not in a bad position either. You know, I think we can go into this game with confidence off the back of the way we've been playing, the results we've been getting. And why can't we go there and get a result? You know, they've got injury problems themselves. You know, they haven't been the side that they were last season and the season before. There's no question about that. And I think we've got to be confident. Leading on from that then, Mark, I was just going to ask you, obviously, how you see what Ollie's going to do in terms of shape and selection. I think it's a nice problem to have. As we touched on earlier, there's sort of a preferred pairing, especially in midfield, with Fred and McTominay being the first sort of option. But the way Pogba's been playing recently, as we've talked about, how do you see the selection and the sort of shape that he's going to line up with those sort of nice problems, nice headache to have?
Yeah, definitely. Pogba's form, you can't really leave him out, or I wouldn't. I think he offers something different to McFred in the middle of the park. I think they've done a great job to screen the two centre halves, and have got to have a good understanding. Fred is your sort of typical, I wouldn't say destroyer, but sort of Brazilian number 6, holding midfielder. McTominay is a little bit more, I guess, sort of box to box, tries to influence in both boxes, but you wouldn't call him an attacking midfielder. You definitely wouldn't call him an attacking midfielder. Maybe a little bit more defensive, but box to box. And Pogba is probably similar. So I personally, I think I like the idea of the diamond with sort of Fred in front of the back four, McTominay to the right, Pogba to the left, and Bruno in his number 10 position. I think if you look at how Liverpool line up, they'll be 4-3-3. They haven't really got many options more than that. There's some debate around who's going to play at centre half for them. With obviously Van Dijk, Gomez, Matip potentially injured as well. So I'd be looking at potentially Cavani as an experienced centre forward, alongside someone who will make runs in behind. So your Rashfords or Martial. Martial seemed to limp off a little bit on Tuesday night, so that could be a good sort of number 9, number 10 foil. And I think as long as they do the dirty work and track the fullbacks, I think that's Liverpool's fullbacks are brilliant. Trent and Robertson overlapping, the constant threat, feeding their front three. But I think if we can match them in the middle, that could create some space for Bruno to operate. So yeah, I'd be looking at a diamond and go with the form players. Bailly, Shaw, Pogba. I think they've all played themselves into contention.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best approach. I know we've talked about it briefly as well, but the fact that there's no crowd, etc. I was going to come to you next, Nick, and just say, obviously, the way we've been playing and the personnel that have been playing well, do you think there's an argument that could be put forward that we should go there and we should really make use of our sort of prowess on the counter attack and to really soak that pressure up from their fullbacks flying forward, the Salahs, the Manes? Do you think that's a tactic that we could approach the game with?
I think with this, I agree with everything everyone said here. we should be playing the form players. Martial did limp off, so you could probably see Cavani and Rashford with the diamond. And I think the way that Ollie sets up is for the counter-attack. You've only got to look at the 2 Everton away games this season to see how effective that is if we get our noses in front. So that's when the counter-attack works. When it doesn't work is if you're a goal down, or the longer it goes 0-0. The fear I have and the niggling sort of worry I have about Ollie is the change for change sake. We saw it a lot last season. The FA Cup semi-final still haunts me, and the fact that we went into that banging form and then changed for change sake. Suddenly Daniel James was up front, and that is my big concern for Ollie as to what we see on Sunday. So I do think we'll soak up pressure. I do think we've got better at it. I really do. But my one niggling doubt is suddenly seeing the team sheet, and it's not what either of us have thought. I think everyone would agree we'd go with the people that are in form. This just screams to me. And Ollie, Pogba, well done, son. You played well at Turf Moor. You're not quite ready for Anfield. Dan, boots on, lad. You're in. Like, it screams. That is my one big worry about the potential team selection.
Yeah, I completely understand what you're saying. I think, in my opinion, I know I talked about it a little bit, but I feel like, although that is a factor, I feel like it's become less of a factor just because of the way certain players have been playing. I mean, on that then, I think the most sort of difficult area to predict, with Pogba playing so well and McFred being the preferred 2, especially for a game like this, do all 3 of those play, Nick?
They will in this game. I think if you look at Ollie's team selections, like you say, with McTominay, there's a player in there, and I slightly disagree with Mark. I think he's more of an attacking midfielder than he is a defensive midfielder. I think he gets caught out positionally, blocks, not approaching the ball as quick as what he could do. But the lads come on leaps and bounds, and I think he's got goals in him. Fred is your bin man, and he'll do the dirty work. But you cannot drop Pogba, and you definitely won't be dropping Fernandes. So there's your midfield 4. That only means you can play a diamond because none of them are wingers. And it probably means the person to miss out is Greenwood if Martial is injured with that suspected hamstring injury. So I think it's one of them that will be the team, but there's nothing wrong with that. We over the last 10 years or so, everything's become about tactics and systems and projects and brands and philosophies and all these kind of buzzwords about football. What's been so refreshing about Liverpool and Klopp, and I hate saying it, is he goes out and goes, that's my best 11. You beat that if you can. And that's what Jose did when he first came to England. And sometimes you do just go, that's my team. That's what I'm going to play. So I do think that will be the team. Injuries have kind of skewed it into that, but I think it would have been that anyway.
Just as a sort of final point on this, it's occurred to me, we've been talking about obviously the Burnley game, now we're talking about the Liverpool game. Mark, is there an argument that this team is actually better suited to play the likes of Liverpool, that's going to come at us, that's going to try and break us down, that's going to be sort of attacking us from the start, than it is the likes of a Burnley, regardless of that golfing quality? Are we better suited as a team for this Liverpool side?
Yeah, I think so. I think we love the counter, breaking teams down. That was kind of what Bruno was brought in to do, I think. Break teams down who sit deep. That was our big Achilles heel last season, and it seemed to be that might do for us again this season. When we started at Palace, it was sort of we'll try and attack you, but if it breaks down, you'll get in behind us and score. That's kind of that became a bit of an issue. I think with Liverpool, they're such a dangerous team that you don't. Whether we just want to rely upon a counter, getting them on the counter, they've got some quick players as well. The fullbacks particularly great recovery speeds. So So I'm not sure. I'm not sure we can solely rely on that. I think we will have to soak up the pressure though, and it depends what they do as well. They're at home. The emphasis is on them. They're the champions, which pains me to say it, but they're the champions by right. I think whether we go toe to toe with them, that could be one hell of a game if so. But yeah, I think realistically we'll probably go in there, try and soak it up, try and hit them on the counter. I think that is probably where we get success in the game on Sunday.
Yeah, definitely. It's the old enemy. Listen, it's the middle of January. We're the top of the league. We can go there, get a result. Whether it's a win, whether it's a draw, come away from there, go on to the next game. What a fantastic position to be in as United fans after what we've been through over the last however many years. Let's enjoy it.
Yeah, this is what football's all about. If you can't enjoy these moments, we've been spoiled as United fans growing up. There's older generation of Man United fans before Fergie came in, and sort of in that sort of unusual period for the club where we've become a cup team and we were searching for that league title. And obviously once Ferguson come in, that really helped us as United fans in our generation. And so I'm still thankful for those brilliant years. Obviously, we all just want to see us get back to that level. And we've had a few false starts over the last couple of seasons. Obviously, Moyes was a dead end. Van Gaal, kind of wrong timing for him. And then we thought Jose was leading somewhere, and that didn't work out either. So, hopefully Ollie is the man to push us forward. I think it all comes down to him learning and adapting as he goes forward, and trying not to when he does make those mistakes, learning from it and coming back, and hopefully he's given the time to do so.
Definitely. I think, listen, win, lose or draw on Sunday, we're in a fantastic position now. Whatever happens, but let's hope we go there and get a result.
Arsene Wenger's been in Japan for a year. He doesn't know anything about English football. He's unaware of the demands of our game.
Okay, guys, welcome back. Final part of the podcast today. So we've had a look at previous games. We're having a look forward to the Liverpool game, but we're going to go forward a little bit more now and kind of see what do we expect for the rest of the season, what we think is going to happen, where we're going to go. So, Nick, coming to you first, what do you think then, obviously, bearing in mind we're obviously going to win on Sunday, what the rest of the season is going to look like for the United? What do you think is I suppose, where you think we can get to, but what do you think is a realistic expectation? What do you think is an acceptable performance in the league for United, bearing in mind where we started and where we are now?
I think at the beginning of the season, all of us would have, considering the points gap between us and Liverpool last year, we all would have accepted progression. Since then, we've been knocked out the Champions League group stages, and things did look a little bit bleak. Seeing where we are now, Sunday has got that feel about it of 2013 Manchester derby, Van Persie free kick, that 6-point swing. So if we win Sunday, I'll hold my hands up and say I'm a believer now. But, I don't want to be the negative Nigel here. Our record against the big boys this season is shocking. Lose at home to Arsenal, who then went on a 9-game bounce without a win. So it was always referred to as they haven't won since Old Trafford. Drew at home uninspiringly to Chelsea and to City, and City were there for the taking then. The Tottenham defeat. The key to me there is all 4 of them games were at home, so we still got to go away at them. And we couldn't hold on to the lead twice at Leicester. So I don't think we'll win it this year. I really don't. But if we'd have said, what do you want? I would have wanted progression. I can see progression in the manager, in the tactics, in the way we play. So 2 or 3 acquisitions in the summer, and then I will probably say we're challengers. So, yeah, don't get me wrong, Sunday's massive and we're right to get excited about it. It could be a 6-point swing, and then we'll have to do another one of these, and I'll say, yeah, I'm a believer now. But if I'm being ultra realistic, our record against the big boys has been terrible this season, but I can see progression.
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree with you with that one there. I think the only kind of light at the end of the tunnel in that respect is that, yeah, our form has been pretty dire against the top six, but we have been predominantly an away form side this season. So I suppose in that respect, it's probably going to play into our hands that we've got to go away to the majority of the top six sides still. So hopefully that will be some light at the end of the tunnel, and we could average some good points from those games. So that's the kind of thing that I'm thinking with that there. So in that respect, really, Joe, what do you think we need in order to improve in the way of signings, whether it be individual players that you'd have your eye on or positions, in order to kind of take us to that next step, so that we're not sort of, just on the cusp of, being dangerous and challenging for the title, but that we're real cast iron contenders?
Yeah, I mean, I think, listen, I agree with what everyone said there. I don't think that we're at the level over the course of 38 games of a Man City or a Liverpool. We have to be realistic. I also think at the end of the day, we are a huge club with good players. All right, City have come into a bit of form in recent weeks and they're looking good now. Liverpool not so much. We if we do get that 6-point swing, who knows what could happen. I agree. I don't think we will win the league, but I also don't think we can't win the league either. Being sort of the club that we are, with the players that we are, and the momentum we could get, especially if we get a good result on Sunday. In terms of the team and where we can improve and where we can get better, I think we did talk about it briefly, but I think we need a long-term solution at centre forward. And as we talked about, Haaland is the obvious one that would be sort of the ideal pick for us. He's obviously doing really, really well at Dortmund. There'll be a lot of clubs who are interested in him. Whether or not it's possible, I don't know. But I think at centre forward, we do need a long-term solution up there. I also feel, although we talked about Bailly coming and doing really well recently with Maguire, I still feel we could improve at centre half. It's a bit of an odd one because now you've got Maguire and Bailly both playing well. They offer something different. Maguire needs that pace from Bailly, and vice versa. Bailly needs that sort of winning the headers and taking the first ball from Maguire. But I do still feel that we could maybe improve there. Yeah, I mean, apart from that, it's about consistency for me. I think if we get Rashford consistent, because when he's on his game, he's unplayable at times. We don't need anything there. We've got options in the wide positions with Martial, with Greenwood. So my sort of suggestion would be we need a long-term centre forward and maybe something else at centre half. I don't know what else we need. That's the honest truth. But what I do know is we've got the players that can play well over the course of the season. They just need to get more consistent.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think there's always positions that you can improve in, even when there's players in forms. I think, in the season that we finished second with Jose, we had one of the best defensive record, if not the best defensive records in the league. Yet Jose went to Woodward and said a new centre-back, which kind of shocked everyone. But I think he's probably been proven right since. So, yeah, even when you've got players playing well, I think there's always, a room for improvement. And Fergie proved that time and time again, dismantling successful teams, rebuilding them over a period of time. So, yeah, I think certainly keeping it fresh is important. And I think certainly then on that note, Mark, do you think that, or would you say that we have a style, or that Ollie has a particular style or philosophy other than being kind of a counter-attacking team? And what would, if we don't, what would you like to see based upon kind of the players that we've got? What do you think we could do?
Yeah, I think credit to Ollie. I think he's getting near on maximum out of this squad of players. I honestly do. I think Jose's shown that how things can go wrong with this squad. Clearly, Ollie's been win-backed in his windows. His signings of Maguire, Wan-Bissaka, Dan James, admittedly, hasn't quite worked out. And obviously, Bruno has been a massive, probably the best signing since Fergie, and his impact on the club. I feel like in that regard, sometimes it's sort of square pegs in round holes. When I look at Rashford's use of him recently on the right wing, he doesn't like playing on the right wing. I still feel like there's a few problems there. McFred is kind of you're putting two midfielders to get one job, if you know what I mean. So we the right wing, a creative winger, a destroyer in the midfield to actually do the work of two. To quote Nick Grant, I think with different options there, you create their different philosophy, a different style of play. I feel like if you've got a right back, a creative right back, someone who will do overlaps and get crosses in, it allows you to play a different style of football. It allows you to switch the play. It allows you to sort of build attacks, and rather than force it and try and find the killer ball all the time, like Bruno and Pogba, that's what they want to do. They want to get the ball, get them on the ball, and look to sort of thread that pass through the eye of a needle. And that doesn't always work. And I think we do need a different way of playing to break down teams that sit deep, especially. And that, for me, is around creativity in the wide areas mainly. I think Luke Shaw's done pretty well. I don't think there's many better English left backs in around at the moment, particularly with Chilwell's form at Chelsea. I'd like to see a bit more on the right side, and I think with Fosu-Mensah leaving, Dalot leaving in the summer, Ethan Laird has just gone on loan as well. I think we're to complement Wan-Bissaka's defensive ability. I'd like to see someone come in, even if it's a bit more of an experienced play. I know Trippier has been rumoured, but just I think that will bring us on a bit. I think Ollie's always said he wants 2 players for each position. I think until we get to that point, we will still be a little bit square pegs, round holes, doing jobs, playing on the counter, because that suits the players that we've got. So yeah, to answer, I think keep making good signings, keep moving out the deadwood, and I think we will get to a point where we might have a few different ways of playing. The counter suits us now, but not to say a couple signings later, we might find a different way of playing.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with that. I think, in my opinion, I think where we were so behind in the transfer market, it was a case of improving upon what we had. The centre-back position was so dire that we had to go into the market for Maguire and probably overpay. I think that's the general consensus, that we perhaps overpaid, but he improved us. I think the right-back position we had was Ashley Young and Antonio Valencia. Aaron Wan-Bissaka has improved us. Are both of them necessarily the long-term answer? You'd like to think so, maybe in Maguire, and I'd certainly like to think so in Wan-Bissaka. But I think, like you said there, perhaps maybe his attacking abilities of falling short to what the modern fullback is. Going back to a subject that we spoke to a little bit earlier on with Paul Pogba, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because if we'd have had this conversation perhaps 3-4 weeks ago, and we'd have done a sell or keep, it would have been a unanimous sell. He's got 6 months on his contract. We don't want to do like the Arsenal model and end up losing some of our top players for next to nothing or for free and to rivals. But that's kind of seemed to completely swung the other way now. Bearing in mind what's happened in the last couple of weeks, and his performances have improved, Nick, and we've seen Raiola kind of shut up a little bit more. What more does Pogba need to do in order to kind of convince people that he should be the man to stay around and help to bring us back to where we were? Or do we still need to kind of say, no, do you know what? Let's get rid of him while we can, because he's due to have a plummet and he's just put himself in the shop window. Where do you stand on the Pogba situation?
He needs to go. The lad needs to go. It's not about anymore his haircuts or his Instagram or his agent. As JP said earlier, you hit the nail on the head with the contract. We triggered the extension, so it's up until the end of next season. But that basically means you've got a decision to make this summer, otherwise you will fall into the Arsenal model. He isn't signing a new deal. He isn't. Like, he's had his time. That'll be 6 years. We could probably count for 6 years, 6 fingers, 6 good games. So Pogba, it hasn't worked out. He's going. Pogba's going. If he doesn't go this summer, we will lose him on a free. And perhaps that's the game he's playing, because I think he wants to go Real Madrid. Because of the current climate, if Real Madrid have money and you offered Real Madrid Paul Pogba or Mbappe, they're going to get Mbappe all day long. Mbappe is made for that white shirt. So then straight away that rules out a financial bid this summer from Real Madrid for Paul Pogba. So I could see us getting royally mugged off in 18 months' time for Pogba, but not for 1 second am I getting carried away with Paul Pogba's performances. We all knew there was a player in there. He's a World Cup winner. He ain't signing a new deal. So for me, there's no point thinking long term about Pogba. For me, looking forward, and I keep saying the words for me again, for me, is Van der Beek the answer? Or do we go into the market now? It's almost now looking at who's Pogba's replacement, because Pogba's not going to be here in 2 or 3 years' time.
Yeah, which leads me nicely onto the DVD Van der Beek situation, really. I mean, we've all discussed at length our bemusement at the signing, and I think that's the general consensus with United fans. You know, why, when, where, when, how did we get hold of Van der Beek, and what's going to be his kind of role? Obviously, he's not going to have the star status that Pogba had when we brought him on, but arguably Fernandes has filled that mantle. Do you think, JP, that perhaps he is going to be the right man moving forward to replace Pogba if we do indeed sell him, you know, in the near future? Or is that still a void that needs to be filled by different personnel, do you think?
It's an odd one for me. And the reason it's not one for me is because we're talking about a highly rated young player that's been playing in the Ajax first team for a number of seasons. That's a full Dutch international, you know, that sort of raised a lot of eyebrows as a good player when he got to the semi-final of a Champions League. You know, the way that he's come in and the way that it's gone for him, for me, it's felt like, you know, that we've signed a promising player that was on the fringes somewhere else. You know, how you might expect when we signed, you know, Diallo that's just come in, or Pelistri or something like that. You know, the way it's gone for him hasn't, for me, fitted his profile. And there may be more to that. We don't know. You know, we don't know what's going on in training. We don't know how he's playing. You know, systems, other personnel that we've got available. I mean, what I would say is, I don't think he's the answer to replace Pogba, but I do think he has got the quality, the attitude, as far as I've seen and as far as I'm aware from what I've heard, to, you know, forge himself a good career. You know, he's a good footballer. You know, there's no doubt about that. I think I was having a chat with one of you lads, I think it might be Nick, about it off air. I think you might have said that, you know, he's a player that's been bought in maybe because he was available, rather than because it's something that we needed as a club at the time. But I don't think that that's a lost cause. I think, as I say, because of what I've seen, because of his attitude, you know, his profile, there's no doubt he's a talented footballer. I think he could forge himself a decent career. He could fall in our first team, but I agree, and I don't think he's the answer to Pogba being replaced. And I also agree that Pogba will go whatever the weather. So I do think that's something that we need to consider.
No, I do certainly think it's a little bit of a conundrum, because you see flashes of brilliance and what you would call a Man United player, that grit and determination, that desire to get into the box, right place, right time. I think his goal scoring record in relation to actual minutes on the pitch is pretty of a pretty decent return, considering he hasn't had an enormous amount of time. So there's definitely something there. But like I said, whether he's in the same mould or bracket to replace a Pogba, you know, remains to be seen. And continuing on the subjects of players and conundrums, Mark, Mr. Mason Greenwood seems to have a little bit of a fall from grace. Life seemed to peak on a high in Iceland, and he's fallen off the side of that mountain ever since, really. To me, what's kind of frustrating is that, you know, watching recent games of people like Martial and Rashford, you'll see us in build-up play, balls will be wide or will be in that final third, and there's no one busting a gut at that back post or that late run, or there's balls going into areas that are not being occupied by forwards, which, you know, Greenwood would do normally, as he's got a little bit more of that natural sort of sixth sense as a striker and as an attacker. What do you think needs to be done from his point of view to force his way back into the side? Because in some ways, you know, Martial and Rashford have flattered to deceive a little bit. So, you know, what do you think needs to be done in order to get him back in the side?
Yeah, I'll touch on Mason just very quickly, but just to close down the Pogba debate, if you noticed after the game Tuesday, in his post-match interview, he said, "Joe, you're happy?" He said, "Yeah, I'm always happy when we're winning." Now, I don't disagree with what the lad said about Pogba over the years. The only thing I would say is Pogba was brought in, big price tag to win things. Now, obviously, it's up to him to try when you come in on that price tag to try and drag the team forward over the line, a bit like what he did at Burnley, but on a consistent basis. And I think Pogba probably came in and thought, what over the last few seasons, looked around him, probably thought, what's going on here then? He looked at people like Andreas Pereira and players of that standard, starting ahead of him or alongside him. And I sometimes think back to Wayne Rooney at United when he had a moment where he was stalling over a new deal, and it seemed to be around direction of the club signings. Now, I'm still in two minds around what Pogba's going to do. I can see him walking in the summer if the right deal comes in, of course. But I wouldn't completely write him off just yet. I think if he goes on and gets us something this season, whether that's a trophy or he's a catalyst in the second half of the season, it wouldn't surprise me if there's a turnaround there. We've seen it before with players. It wouldn't surprise me. That's all I'll say. Now on Mason, I think the England debacle, he was absolutely tortured in the press, hung out to dry, like a lot of young England players are over the years. Obviously, he acted irresponsibly, but he's a kid, he's a young guy away from home, bored in the hotel, whatever. What are you going to do? However, I think I've heard of some issues in his personal life as well. I've heard rumours that his timekeeping is not very good. He will turn up consistently late. Now, obviously, Ollie has had a big impact on him, I believe. Like last season, you could see his finishing, best finisher at the club, Gary Neville calls him. He is razor sharp when he's on it. I think this season he hasn't been on it, and no one really knows why. Maybe sort of second season syndrome type thing. He burst onto the scene and he's trying to find that form again. Whether the off the field stuff is impacting him a bit, I'm not concerned. I think with a player of that potential, the goals will come. I don't think anyone's going to write him off just yet. He's got loads ahead of him, and I think once he gets back on the score sheet, it will start to click into place for him. I think position is a big question for him. If we're not going 4-3-3 on the right, which he's featured on quite a bit, would we play him through the middle just yet? Maybe not, with Cavani in the wings and Martial. So he's probably finding it a bit tough of which position he plays in, because if he plays 4-2-3-1, then the right wing, he's going to have to do a lot of defensive, tracking back. So yeah, not sure. I think it's a wait and see with Mason, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree with that one, really. It's, got given a number 11 shirt, didn't he, after a cracking season, and you'd sort of expect him to kick on from there, and it hasn't really quite materialised this season for him, but certainly no doubt about the talent and the potential of the kid. I just hope that he lives up to the expectation and isn't just another one that, falls through the gaps, really. I think kind of just to maybe round up then, guys, because we've covered a lot of topics here, going back a little bit to the Liverpool game. What would be your 11 for that game if you were Ollie, and I guess a prediction of the final score? So, Nick, what would be your 11 and why, really, if you were going to go in that game? As I know you're an absolute... As your football manager career speaks for itself, so I know this isn't going to be an area that you struggle with.
Well, yeah, legends were made at Stoke, but we'll talk about what we think is going to be, and I think that we all hit the nail on the head. It's not going to surprise anyone with the diamond, McFred, Pogba, Bruno, and I think it will be Rashford and Cavani. I think it will be Rashford and Cavani anyway. Cavani's just had a break. And Tony's picked up a hamstring injury. So I think it would have been like that. Now, me being me, I believe in current form and, you know, rewarding the people that are in current form and things like that. And you could probably argue that Mason Greenwood's in no kind of form, but that performance from Rashford against Burnley was not the one. I would love to see a surprise just to give Klopp and Liverpool something to think about and have a strike force of Cavani and Mason Greenwood. That I would love to see that. I'd love to see that. But I think it would be Cavani and Rashford, the diamond. And I think it will be the same back four because Bailly's earned his place. Plus, you've got the natural get out of not playing Lindelof with his back. So it doesn't make sense to make other changes at the moment. I think that's what we'll see. I would love to see Greenwood given the chance to prove everyone wrong, but I think it will be the Cavani. There's no reason to drop Cavani. He's just had Christmas off, and I think he'll be up with Rashford because of the Tony hamstring. So in terms of predictions, I mean, here we go. Like I go on form and against the big lot. I don't think we'll lose. I don't think we'll win. So I think it will be a draw. So that's where I'm going. But I tell you what, boys, when has a draw at Anfield ever been a bad result? And with no crowd, you know, that difficult 20-minute period that you talked about earlier, you know, you could see it. It's not great for the neutral, but you could see it being one of those games where they just cancel each other out. And that won't be bad for us. But I tell you what, to turn into full-fledged Keegan here, I'd love it. I'd love it if we got a result.
No, absolutely, absolutely. What about you, Joe? What do you think? Well, what would be your selection if it were you, and your prediction for a final score?
Yeah, I mean, not to be a cop out, because as you know, if I disagreed, I'd say, but I cannot see anything other than what Nick has suggested there, the diamond, and the same back four that started the Burnley game. I suppose what I would sort of point out is, we did touch on it earlier. I feel like it's become less of an issue, but I feel like he could throw a curveball at us. We could end up with Daniel James up front on his own, but hopefully not. I feel like he's turned over a leaf from that. So yeah, I can't really steer away from what Nick's suggesting there. What I would just say is, let's put it into perspective. We're talking about, you know, going to Anfield and potentially getting a draw. If we do go to Anfield and get a draw, I think we'll get a draw in the right way. And what I mean by that is, if you look at years gone by, Jose going to Anfield with Fellaini and getting battered for 90 minutes and coming away with a 0-0, it won't be that sort of draw, you know. And I think that just shows, you know, the progression that we've made. And in terms of predictions, I think we have to be positive. I'm on a positive. They're a good side. They could beat us. They could beat anyone. I'm going to say we're going to go there. We're going to take a 6-point lead. They will score, but we'll beat them and we'll win 2-1 at Anfield.
Brilliant. Love it, Joe. Love it. Mark, what about you?
Yeah, the only thing I would add to this is we've kind of put what team we would play. I think that's the team I'd play. I know we might have difference of opinions of how to set up, but that's the team we believe it to be. The only thing I would add is, when we can predict Man United, so will Liverpool. And I just think there's a bit of a risk there that we might become a bit predictable. It might be that they can predict what Liverpool are going to do, and that, you know, that's just the way we are at the moment with the players available and the current climate. But I think back to the Red Bull game, and I think, well, that's the team I'd play. I'm not a professional manager, and I don't know the players. But when I predict the team, and it comes true, I feel like maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's a bad thing. You want Ollie to affect the game, and if that means he springs a surprise that catches Klopp out, great. Hopefully it's not an Ollie special where it's Dan James at left wing back, or Dan James has got a bit of a beast in on this pod. But that's my only worry. It's, don't be predictable that they just nullify us, but don't be predictable that you make a mistake and pick something rascal and you leave us exposed and having to patch things up at half time because we're 3-0 down. That would be a disaster. In terms of a prediction, I think I don't want to sit on the fence, but I can see a 1-1 on the cards. I hope that we get a positive result. Like you say, a draw and a winning at Fulham in the next game after Liverpool would still be top of the league, and I think that's what we got to come out with. I think our away form's been great. I wouldn't say it's been that tested in the league. We haven't gone to Chelsea's, your Spurs, your Cities yet. So a bit of a pinch of salt with the away form. Obviously PSG was big earlier on in the season, but yeah, let's wait and see. But I'm hoping for obviously a win, but not a defeat is what I'm going for.
Yeah, it's funny you should mention that. I was thinking about that point earlier when we were talking about formations, is that you could probably guess more or less our formation. But I think perhaps maybe one of the positives to take from that is Klopp, a little bit like Guardiola, seldom changes his teams because of the opposition. He kind of has a set way of playing, kind of a set first 11, and he tries to stick to that structure to the best he can. Obviously, for Liverpool this season, that's gone a little bit awry because of the number of injuries. So I don't think they're likely to change too much for us or try to sort of outwit Ollie in terms of a tactical or a formation away of their selection. So I don't think that would be as much of an issue. I think it'd probably be more the onus on us, really. But yeah, I think the pattern of play is probably going to be quite obvious, isn't it? It's going to be us soaking up pressure and taking advantage of our counter-attacking prowess, and it'd just be a case of what the formation. One of the things that I don't think any of you boys have picked up or that I haven't heard mentioned is Matic, really, and his sort of partnership with Pogba. I think sometimes Matic seems to, I don't know whether it's because of his experience, previously with Chelsea, whether he's been there a bit longer, but he seems to be a natural foil for Pogba. Or should I say, Pogic, as Mark earlier referred to, or maybe if you called Mogba, I don't know which way around you want to look at it. But yeah, I think perhaps maybe Matic being a more natural defensive midfielder understands the game better. I feel like Fred sometimes is a little bit more of a Duracell battery, where he just sort of runs to where the ball is and tries his best to intercept it, sends a signal from his brain to his foot to kick a ball, and then normally ends up roughly where he wants it. But I don't think he's natural, if that makes sense. And then McTominay, of a similar nature, is very, very energetic, but more box to box. I think the difficulty of when you play Pogba, you have to play somebody alongside him. You can't play Pogba because he is the best person for that position. You have to play Pogba, and then you have to almost accompany him with a chaperone, as it were, to make sure that you don't lose some things. I think that's going to be the conundrum for Ollie. On the Dan James, I hope we don't go with Dan James. Nothing against the kid, but I don't think he is currently at the level that we need him to be at in order to make a difference in the game. I hope Rashford starts picking his footballing form up, obviously doing great things off the pitch. Would like him to be as productive on the pitch as well. That would be great. My prediction, I think it will be a 2-1 to United with a late goal from Liverpool. That will just be merely a consolation. I think as long as we get an early-ish goal in the first half, I think we stand ourselves in good stead. But that's my prediction. 6 points on the road to number 21. So that is rounding up today's podcast, guys. Thank you for tuning in. It's been really enjoyable getting back in the hot seats and talking to you guys today. Nick, Mark, and our Chelmsford correspondent Joe is normally done out of the privilege of Mark's garage, but as you can see, Mark's doing really well from himself at the moment, and that isn't a default Zoom or Microsoft Teams background. That is actually Mark's house. So the sponsorship money from the Southern Bank deal is being well spent. We hope you join us for our next incumbents of this show, and looking forward to talking about the 3 points we've got at Anfield. Take it easy, guys. Thank you for joining us. Much love.
Cheers, guys.